start off with the way that things have changed and SASRIA's mandates from 1979, which of course when it was initially formed, to today.
Yes, at the beginning of 1979, when the government together with insurance companies got together to find an agency that deals with political risks, because ordinarily political risks are not covered by conventional insurers. And since then, until about now, in the new dispensation, there has been new risk that has come about, and there has been an emphasis on labor disturbances, xenophobia, riots, strikes, and public disorder in general. And that has necessitated that SASRIA, to remain relevant, has got to keep on reinventing itself.
Well, let's start off with the numbers that we're seeing at this point in time. The claims at this point for 2010 versus last year. Have you seen an increase?
There has been a marked increase. In 2009, leading up to the World Cup, we did make certain provisions because there were different kind of risks that we were being faced with as a special risk insurer. But this year, in the first 5 months, we are already looking at claims of around 100 million rands. And if one can recall, there has been certain damages like related to the game store that was burned down. That is a claim that we have had to settle, amounting to about 37 million rands. And we also had 17 buses that were burned down, one single claim amounting to about 38 million. So that just gives an indication that of the severity of the damage that is caused by sometimes violent protests or strikes that are part of our everyday life in South Africa.
That's quite a big claim to have in your books. 100 million rand could be an insurer of last resort, that being government.
Yeah, I mean, usually how insurance companies usually work is when you're talking, we're talking private insurance companies, is that they've got a float together. And a float is basically the pile of money that is as a backstop to any claims that there might be. And you're hoping that the claims over time is going to be small enough so that they don't actually wipe out this float. Now, let me just put this for you into some numbers in here, because you like numbers, right? I mean, if you look at man-made claims worldwide, insurance losses are usually about $5 billion US. Okay, I'm talking in the US now. The World Trade Center disaster and its knock-on effect, we're talking about $30 billion US. Now that's enough to wipe out any one insurer quite nicely. You know, I mean, it's a very, very large claim. The question is, and this is really the question is, has government got an open checkbook? Or has government got a float actually together and there's actually some backstop to this and the money will run out at some point?
Well, it's a good question, Collin.
Yes, I think in looking at that, we do an actuarial evaluation from time to time to determine the need, to determine the sort of capacity and the sort of capital that we need to hold. And also there comes country risk analysis to determine, like for instance, during the Commonwealth Games, a lot of risk assessors looked at the risk that would somehow befell such an event. And at some stage, they were actually warning and saying maybe this event should be moved. And it has been proven that terrorism can actually affect events, because if we remember, the IPL cricket tournament was moved from India to South Africa as a result of terrorism risk, an impending terrorism attack.
And our risk profile looks pretty good at this point in time, Collin.
Absolutely. The risk profile gets managed from time to time, and it looks pretty good. But the problem with terrorism is that these kind of events, although they do not happen every day, but when they happen, they are severe. And the calculated loss can amount into billions and billions of rands.
What would you say the biggest risk to South Africa is right now? I mean, we spoke about xenophobic attacks coming to the fore after the World Cup. Of course, luckily that did not materialize. We've got labor threats that are currently ongoing as well. What would you say the biggest threat is in South Africa?
I think we have seen a move from 1976, as you with the first question that you asked, where there has been more political risk being covered by SASRIA, to now where actually it is non-political. Now we are talking about public disorder, sometimes the looting and the burning of property because of a few disgruntled individuals who are organizing themselves. So those, I think they are related to the economy of the country in terms of what is the economic position going forward.
Okay, Kobe, well, just looking at the overall South African picture, I mentioned those, labor issues that have come to the fore. You've got xenophobic attacks as well. From a corporate perspective, I mean, government as an insurer of the last resort. I mean, obviously a good strategy to adopt for any corporates out there.
Well, okay, I might be wrong, and Collin might be able to help us here. But, I mean, this is literally Treasury saying, listen, we've got some money available, okay? We've got a float available, and we will be the insurer of last resort if there's a certain predetermined list, obviously, as far as events are concerned. Now, understand that you're only as strong in government as far as your leverage numbers are concerned. Now, if you look at debt to GDP in South Africa, it's actually quite small, which is not necessarily the case when you look at the rest of the Western world, but it certainly is the case here in South Africa. So when you look at that situation, and you look at the fact that we're not really that leveraged, it means we actually have got money available. And that means that we can be, and the government can act probably as an insurer of last resort. It obviously is, again, specific to the event and how large those kind of events are. At the moment, the kind of events that we're seeing in South Africa are large or for one big insurance company, but certainly not large for, when you look at it from a government perspective.
Let's look at a business interruption.
Yes.
That's also quite an interesting product that you offer, and that's relatively new to my understanding.
Yes, that is relatively new. We've just consulted with the insurance sector and our clients to say that we will look at also providing not only for standing charges, but also for business interruption up to a certain limit. Especially for small and medium enterprises, if that business is destroyed, it's unlike a supermarket chain, which you find that the business is not necessarily extinguished. They would actually need to have this kind of cover. So from ground up, instead of looking at your established entities and established brands.
What about strikes? And of course, a lot of people not going to work, so business interruption there. Does that also fall under that banner?
I think it is going to fall on the basis of what has been agreed upon in terms of the cover, in terms of how it has been quoted. However, in cases of a strike-related damage or a terrorist-related damage, there would have to be particular calculations that are done to determine the extent of that business interruption loss and what would then be settled.
Kobe, also just looking at some of the peripheral issues that have come to the fore, do you think South Africa is very safe from a political perspective? I mean, we see a lot of issues coming to the fore from a political aspect. You see worries coming through from the tripartite alliance in South Africa. As an investor, do you think that it's something that could steer away some of the foreign investors?
Well, I suppose the biggest risk, I think, for me in South Africa, and as again, it's a viewpoint, is our very large population, which is non-working and non-educated, and I suppose the largest risk that we have is that we ignore this problem over time, and as we ignore this problem, it'll just continue to become larger and larger. Then you'll see a lot more riots and so forth. That's obviously the big concern. I think as far as terrorism is concerned and any of these outside factors, I think South Africa is fairly isolated relative to what the West is dealing with. I think it's far more of a risk to the West than we see in South Africa. But again, understand, when we're talking about SASRIA model, these are special type of risks. How do you model this? Very difficult. Insurance companies like to model risks so that they can understand the risk that they're assuming. Very difficult to do this. So therefore, you've got to find something with a big balance sheet. Well, nobody as big as government with a balance sheet.
Yeah. I see you agreeing there, Collin.
Yes, but currently, I need to point out that as SASRIA, having done our own evaluations, we feel that we've got South Africa covered from a special risk point of view. We feel that we are holding enough reserves for any eventualities for the perils that we cover. And it is, unfortunately, there can be certain events that are so huge, which are also man-made, similar to the 9/11 that happened, which would then, of course, shake us.